YNABers. My name is Jesse Meekum, and this is podcast number 12, where you need a budget, where we teach you 4 rules to help you stop living paycheck to paycheck, get out of debt, and save more money faster. Today, we're going to talk about helping you be a smarter investor, or more specifically, how to stop doing dumb things with your money. At least that's the tagline of Carl Richards' new book, The Behavior Gap. Carl is located just over the mountains from me, a fellow Utahn, and I was lucky enough to be able to interview him. So I've got an interview for you here. His book went on sale last Monday. I picked up a copy. It is awesome. It has very little to do with numbers and a lot to do with you and your decisions and your tendencies as a human being. Anyway, it's terribly interesting. If you're wanting to get involved in investing, or if you are involved in investing in any way, which pretty much should mean everyone, you should probably check it out. Anyway, I will cut over to the interview, and then I will see you guys on the other side. It's interesting. I like the subline where you say simple ways to stop doing dumb things with money, because it's kind of a little bit in your face and kind of frank to people. But it doesn't say anything. It's not like personal finance like I would see at Barnes & Noble on the bookshelf, you know, like it's about behavior and I don't know, kind of a new way of looking at it. And that's kind of always been my thing is getting like it's a behavior change. Everything about money is behavior and not really about math. I was wondering if you could speak to just kind of that general principle that you came across.
Yeah, my goal was to write a personal finance / investment book with no numbers. That was sort of like a little challenge I'd written for myself. We didn't pull it off, but yeah, that's the point. And I think people get so frustrated with our experience with money is because I think we have this expectation that it's supposed to be about spreadsheets. Mm-hmm. You know, it's supposed to calculate. It's supposed to 2 + 2 = 4. Why doesn't it work that way with money? Well, you're right. It's not about math and spreadsheets. It's often way more about emotion and behavior. And
yeah, like a 90-10 rule or something like that.
Well, of course, the math has to add up at the end of the day, but we don't make decisions based on spreadsheets.
Mm-hmm. So it's one thing that I caught early on in the book was you gave an example of clients, kind of a group of clients that kind of gang tackled you and came into your office and said, hey, I think, let's see, they started out by saying, hey, we have to get out, or maybe I'm flipping it around. They were really worried, right, that they had to get out of the market.
Right.
So kind of tell that story and kind of maybe lead into our tendency to do exactly what your clients what you stopped them from doing, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's a human, I mean, it's funny. It's so easy for us all to see this behavior in others and even in ourselves in hindsight. And then when it happens real time, it makes sense to us. It feels right. And that's this issue of we are, genetically, I mean, we are hardwired to get away from things that cause us pain and get more of those things that give us security or pleasure.
Yeah. Well, just to one fine point on that give us pain or give us pleasure. So in the moment where everyone is doing this thing, the pleasure comes from being one of those people, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, to maybe that example from the book, this idea that these are smart guys. In fact, they're, brilliant CPAs. Yeah. I mean, they're actually CPAs, and they're no different than the rest of us. I'm certainly not picking on them. Idea was, right, the market's going down, and realize the language even around all these questions, like, shouldn't I do something? Right, the market's going down. No, the market's actually not going down. We don't know that.
Yeah, that's.
We know it's gone down, and if you were trying to avoid that, that's too late. You don't know it's going down. Well, what gives you the impression it's going down? Well, haven't you seen it? Well, yeah, but that doesn't tell us what's happening next. So this, right, at that moment, it makes all the sense in the world. Everyone around you is worried, as evidenced by CNBC on in your dentist's office, right? And,
sure, yeah.
Yelling and screaming. Your neighbors are yelling and screaming. Certainly the AM talk radio here in Utah is yelling and screaming.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just feels right. Like I better do something at this, and this is the other thing. Like we project the most recent, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months into the future. And we're saying at this point, I'll end up with zero, if this continues for 6 months. I've already calculated this continues for another 6 months, I'll have no money left. So the natural thing to do is like, get out. I don't, and it's really interesting. I don't care how rational, how many facts and figures you want to throw at me. If my hand is on a burning stove, I'm going to take it off.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just have to realize that that's the pain. We do the same thing on the other side, the greed side, right? Everybody around us is buying. The coast is clear. Everybody's excited. The economy's going well. Your neighbors are buying new boats and new four-wheelers and snowmobiles. The stock market's doing great. And so you're finally like, I ought to put more money into the market. Or maybe even more specifically, like to pick on everybody's favorite company, Apple. Apple stock's gone up, 10 times in the last 5 years or whatever the number is. And you think, I better get on that train.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the dilemma is, of course, that these things cycle through. And we end up buying high and selling low over and over out of this sort of fear and greed cycle.
Yeah, and you see on your on the cover, repeat until broke, which is fantastic. The Apple one's a really good example. And one other thing I think that's interesting and adds more complexity to the behavior and to the decision making. I recall where I was in my apartment. I had just gotten married in 2003. And I recall reading an article in Fortune. I was an accounting major. And so I was like my own little, making myself an MBA type. I would read Fortune and all this stuff. So I'm reading that, and I remember reading about iTunes and the iPod. And we had some extra money that we'd been saving, and I, thinking I was super wise, I bought some stock in Apple because I thought, well, this sounds fantastic, right? So I buy the stock. I remember buying it at 34, and then it went up to about 60 over some short period of time, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I made the best choice ever, and I sold it, right? And that was like the worst choice I could have made, because if I would have held it, and so you don't only have the timing of should I buy it, but then you also have the timing, even if that was a good decision, whatever good means, honestly, but then you look back and you say, well, that was actually a poor decision because now it's worth, 400 or something, So it's like there's no way to win. I can't even go up and say, hey, that was a great move. I doubled I think it was $300 or something. It's like, well, I doubled my $300. It's like, well, it could have been 3,000. So. Yeah.
Well, and I think that there's a lot of points in there. Like one is, was that a good decision or was it lucky?
Yeah, exactly.
And I love the idea of like, I think we have to realize, and this plays in a lot with our financial decisions, that you can make a bad decision and have a good result. The result and the decision are independent functions. And my favorite example is that crazy guy in the UK that, I can't remember how old he was, like in his mid-20s, that decided it was really smart to sell everything he owned. And it sort of added up to like $100,000. I can't remember. I can't remember the exact amount, but it was like $100,000. He took it all to Vegas for one roll of the roulette wheel. Is that a good decision or a bad decision? We'd all say that's a bad decision. Well, he won, and he won like $1 million. Good decision or bad decision? It was still a bad decision.
Mm-hmm.
So, like in your case, but you're right. You don't. It's just funny. Let's change that scenario and say that you have this diversified portfolio in your 401k. And you're automatically saving, and suddenly the world's all going down in a smoke, and everybody around you selling, and so you decide that it's wise to sell, to bail out of your long-term plan because of some short-term problem.
Mm-hmm.
And now, to your point, now I have a new problem. When do I go back in?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you just traded one stress for another. You jumped out of the pan and into the fire, and so it doesn't. I think it's just much better to get really, really clear about goals. And this is all so boring. It's like, but get really clear about goals, get really clear about your current reality, where you are today. Like that's the starting point. Build a balance sheet. And if you don't know how to do it, don't be embarrassed because most people don't. Use the Google and search, build a personal balance sheet and build a balance sheet, set some goals, build a plan to get there, build a budget to get there, build an investment plan to get there, and then stick with it. And just at that point, just sit there, right? Don't do anything. Just let it work.
Yeah, we have a propensity for action in this realm where we maybe don't with exercise or healthy eating. But for some reason with investing, if you're not doing something, I don't know, it's like this demand on you, like I have to be doing something. I have to be trading or researching and then buying or whatever it is. It's really interesting that we're so inclined to act there. And we don't really, I don't feel a big, I don't get an adrenaline rush when I see my 401k deduction go out of my paycheck and like go off into the void. That doesn't get me excited. But when I decide, I'm gonna look into gold, I didn't actually, but classic example at the moment. So I just so funny that we can't be satisfied with the boring when it comes to investing for some reason.
Yeah, we confuse investing in entertainment a lot, and
yeah,
I think it leads to big problems. It's so much cheaper and frankly far more entertaining to go to the movies.
Yeah, that's true, and that is a lot cheaper. In your book, one number you did give, or not really a number, but a fact that I found really interesting was the only correlation that has been found, I hope I don't butcher this, to investment performance is the expense ratio, and that blew me away. I had no idea that was true at all.
I mean, think about what you're doing when you're trying to pick investments, and there's an entire industry built around this, that we're looking for predictive variables, right? Like, so we say, all right, there's these 1,000 mutual fund managers. We're trying to figure out which one will be the next, Warren Buffett.
Mm-hmm.
And so we say, all right, well, what variables could we use to determine who would be the next Warren Buffett? And we think, okay, well, we could look at how they've done in the past. Like that's how you would hire a basketball coach.
Yeah.
That's how you'd hire somebody to remodel your kitchen. You'd go look at the work they've done in the past, and then you'd have a reasonable expectation that would continue in the future. So we expect to apply that same logic to investment managers, but it doesn't work, and that's a longer discussion why it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, if you look at the mutual fund managers that have done well the past 10 years, chances are they're going to be the ones that do poorly the next 10 years. So you start looking at investment, you start looking at predictive variables like performance, and I've looked at there's research been done on all, eye color, education, training, experience, number of computers, research staff, all that stuff. None of those you can really find any predictive variable at all, except for one. Expenses, and it's pretty easy to know why. It's simple math. If you have one mutual fund that got 10% and it costs you 2% in expenses, the internal expense ratio is 2%, you only kept 8.
Mm-hmm.
You have another mutual fund that got the same exact return, 10%, and the expense was only 1, you kept 9. So the higher the expenses, the worse the performance is going to be.
So are you writing yourself out of a job as a financial advisor? What would you do with a new client? Because I don't think you are, but it sounds to me like, and I've been kind of like a, index fund proponent, kind of hands off.
Yeah.
I've been a fan of the target funds.
Sure.
Not all of them. Some of them masquerade as index and they're actually actively managed. But anyway, I've been, just kind of a proponent of those because I have been able to recognize, and I mess around sometimes for entertainment purposes, in the market. But the vast majority of what I do, kind of my core, is really boring. And I've never used a financial advisor, but as an advisor, what is your plan with people? Is it more of this goal definition, walking them off of ledges, that type of thing?
Yeah, and I have no dilemma. I hope that I don't have a job I mean, if we could all get like, I have no problem with the idea of it's this stuff is really really simple. Unfortunately, it's not terribly easy, but it's really really simple. The Vanguard, I mean, no discussion of investing it's almost a crime to have any discussion of investing without at least mentioning, indexing and Vanguard. Like, look, the Vanguard target date funds. I was just looking actually at the Vanguard. I think it was the 2045, and the expense ratio inside that is 0.19.
So nothing virtually.
It's nothing. It's got the U.S., it's got international, it's got bonds. It automatically rebalances. It does all the things you need it to do. If you just set up an automatic contribution to that every month, all the time, of as much of your income as you can afford, as close to 10 or 15% of your income as you can possibly do, like, your plan is going to be better off than 99% of the population.
Yeah, and you
So,
won't have anything to talk about at Thanksgiving.
no, you don't have anything to, of course,
Yeah.
that's absolutely boring, but please just go find other things to talk about. There's plenty to
Right.
talk about sports, but my point is, most people don't do that. We all should, and we all can, and the tools are there. And if you can, please do it. You know, and then you say, well, what do I need a relationship with an advisor for? Well, I I I can tell you, most people don't do that. Most people want, and I know what I need my financial planner for, because I hired a financial planner, and that's really just to walk me in off the ledge, to really to prevent me from doing dumb things with money. I've
Yeah.
written a book about simple ways to stop doing dumb things with money, and I need somebody to prevent me. Often it's spending, or should we buy this house, or should, my experience in Las Vegas would have been prevented had I had a planner say, hey, that's a bad idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I think the role of a, but you know what? Your friends can play that role. Your parents can play that role. A trusted CPA or an attorney. You just have to find somebody, and this is a problem no matter who it is. You got to find somebody that will tell you the truth when you're going to do something, before you do something stupid. There's plenty of people in our lives tell us after we've done something stupid. I want somebody who will tell me, at least if they know, they'll tell me before.
Yeah.
Won't be scared to say, hey man, I think that's a bad idea.
That's good. That's good advice. And I mean, the audience for this podcast, they're all budgeters. They all record their spending. They all sit down every month and decide what they want that month's money to do. And I try and wean people off of like annual budget plans. I think I read it. There was a New York Times article a while ago where they said that the most accurate budget was an annual one. They did all these comparisons, and I had to laugh because of course it would be the most accurate, because you had the whole year to like even out all the ups and downs, and all of the pain happens on like these big fluxes, during December with Christmas is huge, where people are feeling totally stressed. But I've managed to get people to a point where they enjoy the process of planning what they want, what every dollar should do.
Yeah.
And it sounds like to integrate with what you're saying, is just, some of those dollars, we call it giving every dollar a job. Some of those dollars jobs need to be to go off and for you to basically forget about them. Just send them off to an automated, everyone's got to do a bit of their own research, but there's so much done out there already. But yeah, send it out, to something that reallocates for you. And then just go to town, just keep throwing money at it and don't think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we can all agree that behavior plays a massive role in all of these decisions, all the way from budgeting to investing, we have a tendency to just want to kind of grit our teeth and sort of willpower our way through it, accept that doesn't work. And instead, I just love the idea of like maybe accepting how dumb we really are, and I mean that like all of us, and I'm being careful and slightly tongue in cheek, but we've got to realize that the best solution is, and I think what you're saying is, automate good behavior. And so whether that's, and I think this plays a huge role in budgeting, right? Like let's automate good behavior. And in the investing world or saving, like for instance, let's say it's really important. I don't know how many of your listeners are here in Utah, but this applies generally. Say it's really important for you to save for education. Utah happens to have a phenomenal
They do.
education savings plan, super low cost, great investment options. Well, if it's important and you figure out that you can afford to save $50 a month or $100 a month or whatever the number is, let's say it's $100 a month, don't make that decision every month. Don't sit down once a month and write out the check. Make that an automatic behavior that just pulls the money out of your account. And so I think that's true no matter whether it's, saving for education or investing or budgeting or cash flow. I think we need to realize we are our own worst enemies. It's time to automate that behavior. You'll be blown away by the difference it makes when you just say, all right, $100 a month going into this education account. You wake up a couple of years later, you've saved some money.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a really good point across all, sort of everything to do with money.
Yeah. A classic example for me and my wife is, one thing I should say about having the mentor or having the person that can kind of check you, if you're married or if you're in a situation where you're sharing finances, hopefully that person can be a check. And real communication, not why did you spend this, but more like what do we want, what do we want to do? And I think sitting down, Julie and I sit down once a month and plan out the month. A lot of the stuff, the decisions that are already been made, we've been saving for a car for so long because our van is luckily just hanging on by a thread, And so we've just been putting money aside again and again, and we'll be able to get a nice paid, totally paid for cash car used, and we didn't really have to work for it. It felt almost free, which was an interesting realization. She asked me the other day, how much we have in our car account, and I told her, and she was blown away because it's just been automatic. She just never thought. She thinks about groceries. It's like, do we have kids? Kids' clothes, groceries. If we hit those two, she's like, whatever else happens is fine.
No, I think that's you could do a podcast every day and just tell that same story. It's you know what I mean? It gets boring, but you'll be surprised at how little it hurts.
Yeah.
And again, this is all stuff I'm learning myself, and I'm been surprised at how little it hurts to set aside some money, and then you just slowly try to increase that. I think of it as like a little, I don't know that vice is the right word because you think of your head in a vice type thing, but you just slowly try to increase. Okay, $100 this year has been fine. We haven't even noticed it. Let's do 125.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly you're like, wow, we're saving 10-20% of our income between our 401ks and our other stuff, and we don't really even feel it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And I like something we hit on just a second ago, and I think we'll wrap up, but you said find your entertainment elsewhere, and I think that's a great ending. Don't make money harder than it has to be. Whether it's just managing your cash flow, which is where I focus 99%, or whether it's managing your future, where you're focused, with the investing. Although, your book plays into every aspect, not just investing, but being able to make that, simple, to where then you do other stuff. Money doesn't have to be this thing that you focus on all the time that's haunting you. It can really be something where you're on kind of autopilot and things are, running pretty smoothly for you. And then you're wondering why it's not snowing, and that's your biggest concern. So,
right. It's a cool problem to have when you have to figure out, wow, what am I going to do with all that time and emotional energy I was spending on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, do you have any parting words for YNABers, diehard budgeters, and maybe newbie investors?
No, I think this idea of, this is something I just came to the conclusion. Jesse, I'm sorry. There is a bald eagle flying 10 feet from my window. That is.
You are so. How did you pick to live in Park City? Because here I am on the other side of the mountain.
Oh my gosh, that is unbelievable. That's the second time I've seen that eagle. Anyway, Park City. I grew up here when I was younger, and
okay.
350. Sorry for that distraction. I've never seen it that close to the window. But after living in Vegas for 7 years, where we had 350 days a year of sun, the idea of living in the valley where it gets a little in Salt Lake City, Utah, for those people, it's a little inverted sometimes in the winter.
Oh, yeah.
And be days where it feels totally cloudy and smoggy in Salt Lake, and you'll come up to Park City and it's completely blue sky and sunny. And so living in the mountains, I grew up here. We don't live far from my neighborhood, my childhood home, and it was sort of home for us. That's why we ended up here. But in terms of parting thoughts, budgeting is something I just became more convinced of over the last 12 months. And I now feel like, and I've done a sketch on this actually, I now feel like budgeting sort of becomes, and everybody runs in horror from the theater when you mention the word budgeting, but not this audience. And I think it becomes the bedrock, the foundation of the rest of goals. So if you take the same concepts you've been using, automate behavior, track spending, ask questions, use that data to ask questions about, I love this idea that I don't care what you tell me is important in your life. The old phrase that the checkbook and the calendar never lie.
Absolutely.
We know how you spent your money. We know what you really we know what you really value. And so using that data to make more informed decisions and more aligned decisions, I think, is really important.
Awesome. Well, this has been really fun. We'll have to get together again. I'm just curious to see how it all plays out with your book. So congratulations again on the book. It looks like it's doing really well. And anyone, I've recommended a few books over the last several years. Very few, but I just heartily recommend this. It's so in line with just kind of being introspective and having yourself do like a self-assessment that, I don't know, I dog-eared so many pages. The dog-ear was almost, pointless because, it became meaningless after a while with every other page dog-eared. But it's fantastic. So YNABers that are listening, check out the book. They can get it Barnes & Noble, Amazon, just anywhere online. Bookstores, I would imagine, have it as well. So,
yep, it's in all the Barnes and Nobles and anywhere online, and even I've been told most of the little sort of local independent bookshops.
Cool, very cool. Well, thanks, Carl, for coming on. YNABers appreciate it. I appreciate it as well. It was good insight, and hopefully we can all walk away not quite as dumb with our money, and it'll be just fine. All right, you have a good day. Good luck with the rest of your interviews and promotion.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you later. All right, that is a wrap. I hope you enjoyed listening to the interview as much as I did in giving the interview. If you guys want to see more interviews of other personal finance authors or people shaking things up in personal finance, shoot me an email, podcast@unitedbudget.com, with someone that you might want to hear from, and maybe we can land an interview with them. Until next time, follow YNAB's 4 rules, and you will win financially. You have not budgeted like this.